Hey everyone, how are you all doing? Thank you so much for watching another video of mine. I have been a little bit unwell, so I apologise for the lack of videos last week, but I'm back and I sound a bit horsey, that is why. So today's video is about our house renovation. I thought it would be really interesting to share with you my top do's and don'ts when it comes to doing an extension. So this is our first extension. We did a double-storey extension, and I will link our full house tour down below so you can look at it if you're new here. But we recently finished and we've learned a lot along the way. So I just thought that if you were potentially thinking about doing this in the future, or maybe you're mid-extension now, maybe I could share some useful tips. We absolutely love our extension. We're very, very happy with it. However, there are a few things that I definitely would do differently next time. But you learn these things along the way, and I will be happy to implement them in our next renovation, whenever that might be. But as it stands, we are extremely happy with the overall finish that we have got. But yeah, I just thought this would be super interesting for everyone. So, as always, sit back, put your feet up, get yourself a cup of tea, relax, and enjoy this video. So my first top tip or do would have to be invest in a decent architect, someone who comes recommended. And the reason for this is I did not realise how important they were to the finish of the building. So we invested in someone that we thought was going to be absolutely amazing. He was very expensive, and we basically, to cut a long story short, he ran away with about $2.5 grand of our money. So he literally just disappeared off the face of the earth, and we didn't have any plans to submit because our process was very long and drawn out and needed like tweaking and changing. So we were then left in a position where we needed to find another architect. But as we'd already spent $2 to $2.5 grand, although that wasn't the whole bill, we'd already given him this amount of money, we didn't want to start the process with somebody else. So thankfully, there was an architect that had already drawn some plans up for this house before we bought the house. So we contacted him because he had all the measurements. He didn't need to do all that again. The cost was less, which means we kind of recouped our money, which was great. However, as much as he was a lovely guy and he got our plans through the council, which was amazing and we're forever grateful for because it was an extremely hard process, he didn't really think outside the box where the internal walls are concerned. Does that make sense? And so I just went with it. I just went with what he said. And since we've lived in it, I've realised that it could have been done so differently. So just the biggest thing for me is this kitchen living area. So I'm sat in the like lounge area of the kitchen, but in my mind, it should have been flipped around because behind me, as you can see, the kitchen is the darkest bit of the room and I'm sat in the lightest bit, and I just feel like the kitchen should have been in this area and then the living should have been in there, but it doesn't matter. We are very happy, but those types of things is something an architect would definitely help you to do, and they are worth their weight in gold if they're good and they know where things go and how things work internally, whereas I'm all about how things look pretty. I don't actually truly I do have a bit of experience in where walls and things should go, but when you're doing such a huge project with like all these different rooms to visualize, it's very difficult to make those decisions when you've got a million other things to think of. So for somebody to do that for you is, yeah, worth its weight in gold. So that would be my top tip, is invest in a reputable architect. So my next tip would be to build the shell and paint the entire thing white, move in, or maybe you're already living in it, and then decide on what colour you're going to have each room, what furniture you're going to put in each room, what floor finishes you're going to put in each room. I did too much in one go. So I have 3 children, and one of them was only a baby. I would say he was like crawling. I think he was about 7 or 8 months when we started. No, he was 6 months old when we started, and as you can imagine, it was really difficult to make decisions, and I felt like I had to make every decision before we moved back in. So what colour the walls were going to be, what was on the floor, when actually I could have just moved in and then decided on things. So that would be a huge tip of mine. If I was to do it again, that's what I would do. I would obviously get the kitchen in because you need a kitchen, but I wouldn't put a floor down because I'd like to live in it, know what the light is like, feel the space, how it works. At the end of the day, when you're investing this much money, you're going to be in this room for, you know, most of the day. It wants to be right, and there are things that I would definitely change had I lived in it a little bit longer. But yeah, that would be my next tip, is to build the shell, paint it white, live in it, then decide on the finishes. So my next piece of advice kind of goes hand in hand with the kind of deciding on the interior choices and the fact that I had a young baby, is to make mood boards. I didn't make any mood boards, which I really regret, because when you do make a mood board, you really see the colours and how they work together. Whereas if you don't, you're kind of winging it a bit, and you might get it right, but you might get it wrong. Now, everything I chose in my house, 80% of the things I chose in my house, it's because I liked them. So I saw it in a shop and I liked it. But that doesn't necessarily work sometimes. Sometimes you have to put materials next to each other and on a mood board for you to see if it's all going to work together. So I kind of wish I'd done that, and maybe I'll do a separate video and talk about all the things that I would potentially change if I was to do another renovation. But yeah, that is a big thing for me. But again, having a 6-month-old baby, living in a caravan, which I'll get onto in a minute, lockdown, like it was all in the middle of lockdown. It was crazy times. I just literally wanted to get it finished and wanted to move back in. So I was like, yeah, and I was like making decisions really fast. Yeah, we'll have that. Yeah, we'll have that. We'll have that. We'll have that. We'll have that. And that's all good and well, but I think the attention to detail would have been better had I had moved in, done some mood boards, and just done room by room. And that honestly, for me, cost-wise would have been better as well, because if I was doing room by room, I would have been able to source, like go and get cheaper things here and there. But yeah, I'm digressing. The main point of that is mood boards. Okay, so going back to my point of I chose everything I liked, or 80% of this because I liked it, goes on to my next point. Do not be swayed by trends on Instagram. Okay, I've always lived by this. So luckily my style is modern traditional. It always has been. As I say, this is the first extension we've done, but we did actually renovate a property before. We didn't do an extension, but we did like a kitchen, diner, and we did like a bathroom, and it's always been modern traditional. I've always gone for like the natural stones and the woods, and then the kitchen. In fact, the kitchen I had in my last house was almost identical to the one I've got now. So try and go with things that you like, not what is trending on Instagram. And the reason I say that is because things that trend on Instagram tend to have a shelf life, and your house will start to look very dated and you'll start to feel very unhappy with stuff if you choose it based on what is current. So just be mindful of that. Obviously, if you see something you love and you really love it, great, but don't do it just because it's popular. Does that make sense? And the reason I say that is because I did do a couple of things based on the fact that it was trending on Instagram. So the first place that I did this in my home is the grey paint I put in the hallway and the landing above the panelling. Basically, I liked a much more neutral colour when I put the samples on the wall. All of the paint that I bought in my house was bought from samples, not because I'd seen it anywhere, because don't buy paint based on what it looks like on Instagram, because people put filters on their photos and they change the lighting and it will look different in your home. So definitely put a tester pot on the wall. But I preferred a more neutral colour, but because every picture I'd seen on Instagram with panelling had grey, I went for the grey, and I've regretted that decision, and I just can't be bothered to repaint it because it still looks lovely. And the second thing I did in my home that was swayed by Instagram was the chevron floor in my dining room and hallway, which I love, but we put herringbone in our living room about 4 years ago, I would say. So before it was popular, and we still love it to this day because it's a very traditional kind of style, and we love it, and we chose that because we loved it. And my husband said at the time, let's just mirror it in the dining room. And he was right. I hate to say it, he was definitely right, because I went for something that was more popular and it's just going to go out of fashion. So yeah, that would be a big point of mine, is choose what you love, don't be swayed by Instagram trends. So something I touched on earlier is getting quotes for things so that you can get more reasonable prices. So get 3 quotes for everything. Something I didn't do because I felt like I wanted everything yesterday. I was in a rush. I wanted to just go with the first people we saw, much to my husband's like dismay. I literally just wanted to get it done, and I have since realised we could have saved so much money on things had we just waited and shopped around and been patient, because at the end of the day, it's going to take a long time, regardless of who you go with. So what's waiting an extra month for someone that might be a bit cheaper, or yeah, that would be a huge thing of mine, is 3 quotes for everything. And obviously I wasn't choosing things that were insanely expensive, but I definitely could have saved money in areas and then spent more money on the things that I love, because it's now got to the stage where I've still got so much furniture to buy for the house, but I've had to put a pause on it because we spent a lot of money on the house. So I'm waiting patiently until we can get the final bits for the house. Okay, so this point is for people that have children that are about to do a renovation, or people that will have children when they're doing a renovation. If you can afford it, or if you've got a family member that can put you up, move out. Rent a small place if you can afford it, because it will take a lot longer than you were originally quoted. So if they say 3 months, just allow 4 or 5 months. I wish we'd rented a little flat for 6 months, because what we ended up spending on holiday lets, and we lived in, okay, it wasn't a caravan, it was a motorhome, but it was still tiny. For 3 children, 2 adults, a baby that didn't sleep, screamed the whole place down and woke everyone up. It was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest with you. If we'd have just rented a little flat, like private rented a flat for 6 months, it would have been so much less stressful. My baby was crawling, we didn't have any room for him to crawl around. Meals I had to cook on a tiny little cooker. It was just a nightmare. If our driveway was big enough, we would have parked it on the driveway and it would have been easier, because I could have like stayed there, but we had to park it at my husband's work, which meant that by like 8:30 in the morning, when all his staff arrived, I had to leave, because I wasn't going to sit there whilst they were all working, and I didn't want to get in my husband's way, so I had to spend all day out of the house. So yeah, my biggest thing would be to rent a little flat or something alongside it if you can. If you've got family that will put you up, amazing. Unfortunately, my mum's house wasn't big enough for us to live there. And actually, to be totally honest with you, I wouldn't have wanted to live there for 6 months. You want your own space. When you've got your own children, you want your own space. So yeah, ours was a big job and we couldn't have lived in it. There was no bathroom. And the back of the house was off. It was just, there was absolutely no way we could have lived in it. So we had to go and live in holiday lets, but they cost us a fortune because it's a holiday let. So you're obviously paying holiday prices. And this was also in the middle of lockdown. So it was, that side of it was the most stressful for me. And I would say, yeah, if you have young children, either if you've got a space in your garden for a caravan, great, because that's the cheapest way of doing it. But if you don't, rent a place, because I'm telling you, it's going to take longer than you originally anticipated. So yeah, that is the end of my video. I hope that didn't bore you too much. I know it was a very talky, chatty video. And I like to talk, as you probably already know, but hopefully it was interesting and you got some points. If there's any more questions, leave them in the description box below. I will try to reply to every comment, or you can message me over on Instagram and I'm happy to answer there. But as always, thank you so much for watching another video of mine and supporting me. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more of my videos, then please don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and I'll see you all very soon.